Hey folks, my name is Andy Sito. Welcome back to another episode of Middle Class Rockstar. My guest this week is singer, songwriter, and guitarist Martin Gilmore. All right, I just did that intro without the theme song in the background. I need the theme song in the background to know when to say things, but hopefully it lines up in a reasonably good way. Anyway, my guest is Martin Gilmore. I don't use the word virtuoso lightly. I'm tired of the word because everyone's a virtuoso as long as you've got Chat GPT to write your bio for you. But I would describe Martin Gilmore not using the word lightly at all as a virtuoso. He is a wonderful guitarist, plays mostly in the bluegrass vein, but just a great all-around musician. Wonderful voice, great songwriter. He has one of those contagious things about him where if you're sitting around in a circle listening to him play and sing, it's just it's a happy place to be. I first became aware of Martin when I was in college, and he came and played at my school, CU Denver. We became friends several years later. We were in the Telluride Troubadour contest together last year, which he won, and it's been great getting to know Martin and getting to know his music, and now do this interview. Martin went to the University of Wyoming for I don't know how long, but dropped out, ended up coming to Denver, playing music. He's been a teacher at Swallow Hill in Denver for, I think, since 2008, a long time. He's also taught courses at the University of Denver and the University of Northern Colorado. Along the way, he's spent time in Cairo, Egypt. I think we cover it all in the interview. But also a cool thing in this interview is Martin and I actually, well, he plays, I don't play. I actually have him play some stuff because he's talking about the G chord, the C chord, and the D chord in bluegrass music, how a beginner can play with an advanced player, and it happens all the time. And I asked him to demonstrate that, what a beginner might sound like versus an intermediate player versus an advanced player, just with these three simple chords. And it was really, really cool. Let's see. With me, I've been traveling a ton. I'm still, the next 5 weeks are going to be kind of nuts, not really at home, doing some dates with my band, The Minor League. I just got back from Michigan. I got to open for Anders Osborne at the Acorn Theater in Three Oaks, Michigan, and it was so cool. Anders produced my last record, Night Skin, but we haven't played together, seen each other in a while, so we got to do this show, and if you don't know Anders' music, you've got to check it out. It really comes from the heart, and he's just an amazing singer, songwriter, guitarist. But we chatted for a while before and after the show, and one of the things he was talking about, because I tend to sort of go all over the place genre-wise with my music, as does he, and he said, focus on catalog and making music that you love. Don't try to follow trends. Just do what you love. And make it and put it out there. And it's something I've thought about, a lot since we did our show together. And he also said, my career is attainable for you. And I look at what Anders has done, and I think, no, it's not. But hearing him say that, it was just really, really encouraging. And I think from your mentors and your elders, when you hear things like that, it keeps you going in this crazy indie music world where sometimes you just wonder, what the hell am I doing? Why am I driving 600 miles to play for $300 or whatever? I've done worse for less, but it's all part of it. It's all part of the thing. And I was reflecting on that as I was hearing about some of Martin's struggles in the music business, and getting money for his recorded music. And anyway, I'll get into it. I'll quit blabbing. If you're not familiar with Martin Gilmore and his music, you could check out his YouTube channel. He's got tons of stuff up there with, instructional stuff and a lot of the bluegrass stuff he does is up there. Is a great place to start. Or if you want a couple songs to start off with, I love his song Jenny and Jackson off of his self-titled record, Martin Gilmore, that came out in 2009. Also on his 2024 album, Trade Songs American West, he does his version of Big Rock Candy Mountains. That's not even scratching the surface for Martin's catalog, but I give you that song because I think if you listen to him do a song that you already know, you'll say, man, I want to listen to this guy's entire catalog and all of his originals too. So those are the two I'm going to give you to start off with. Anyway, that's enough of that. Sorry for the long ramble. Let's jump in. If you like this podcast, give it a 5-star rating or review wherever you're listening, or if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. I'd love that. And if you'd like to get involved in a monetary way, I'm on Patreon at patreon.com/Andy Sydow, Sydow. Let's do the show. Here's my conversation with Martin Gilmore. Oh, am I live streaming? I'm not trying to live stream. I don't know who this is live streaming to if it is. Well, anyway, I'm here with Martin Gilmore. We're doing this on Riverside FM, and I've been experimenting with this for a few episodes now. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Hanging out in a nice morning in Colorado. It's going to be hot later.
Well, at least it's a dry hot.
Yeah,
it totally sucks in Tennessee.
Right. Yeah. When I was in Kerrville in May, I learned about heat.
Oh, it was hot this year down there?
Oh yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, it's like 100. Yeah,
the thing about Kerrville too is there's like absolutely no escape from the heat. Yeah. It's just like, because it's not like you can go inside to the air-conditioned cafeteria or whatever. Yeah. You just have to hope someone with a car is going to like drive to the river.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, I was lucky. I rented a car, so I had that flexibility. And then the second day I was like, I'm 41 years old. I can afford a hotel room, and I bailed. So.
Oh, you did? You went and got a room?
I chickened out. Yeah, that was. I'm not like much of a camper anyhow, and then when it's that hot, I just like, if I get tired, like my mental health goes down, and it manifests in just me hating everything, which I don't hate anything. So if I start feeling that way, I'm like, I must be really tired. I should go get some sleep. So
yeah,
that was my move.
That's fair. If I go down again, I might take the same route. It's. It's a lot of fun being, because everyone's in it in the same situation, and maybe you make a friend who's got a trailer, let you go sit in it for a while. But it's, did you ever go to the bathroom in the octagons?
In the octagon, yeah, I sure did. I camped the first night and stayed out there and did the whole thing. And I mean, I think the camping thing was great, but I just like, I had like the night that I arrived, I hadn't slept well the night before that too, and so it was like 2 nights of not sleeping good in a row. And I was doing the competition. I was like, I can't do this. Like this is gonna wreck the whole thing. So,
well, it worked out for you because you won.
I did. I won. Yeah, it did work out for me. And I'm not gonna blame it on the hotel room necessarily for winning, but it was a good decision on my part.
Yeah, right. Well, and so maybe we should jump into these contests first, just because it's kind of organically gone that way. I don't think you'd ever really entered any song contests, and people go through, songwriters kind of seem to go through seasons, where they do the contest life. But I think it can be, even though it's great experience, mentally taxing. And you're traveling to these festivals and not getting paid anything in most cases to go do these contests. But you started entering last year, and you've kind of just won all of them. We did Telluride Troubadour together last year. You won. You won Folks Fest last year in Lyons, and then you won Kerrville this year down in Texas. So. I mean, I understand like music as a competition is maybe a little silly, but it has to make you feel pretty good and validated in what you're doing to win, right?
Yeah, it's very shocking to me. It's not what I had expected, and kind of not what I had entered the contest necessarily for. But yes, I mean, very validating. The thing that has been really amazing, though, is just, well, I've said this to people, but I'll say it here too. I grew up in the bluegrass world, which is somewhat competitive in a maybe not an outwardly competitive way, but everybody's trying to play the hottest licks and play the fastest, and there is sort of a competitive thing, but it's also like very nurturing musically. And so I don't know that I necessarily felt the pressure in the same way that I felt pressure in bluegrass contest stuff that I've done. When I'm playing the guitar or something like that, which I haven't won those. But the thing that I have realized is that the singer-songwriter world and the bluegrass world are not the same, and I always thought that they were the same because I knew songwriters within bluegrass. And then when I met Jackson Emmer, he kind of introduced me to this whole singer-songwriter world in a really different way, and I realized like, oh, these aren't the same things at all. And I like really just wanted to kind of immerse myself in that and meet more folks. And Jackson said, hey, the contests are great places for that because you'll meet the contestants, but also people who there are people who go and listen to the contests who are just really into songwriting. And that it, those people will see you, and it's like, it doesn't even, if you win or lose, it doesn't matter. You make all these new relationships. And that's been definitely the case. Maybe with Kerrville being like the best place for that. Kerrville's really amazing for that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm very grateful to have won and honored to have won those contests. But for me personally, like the relationships that I've made in those contests have been more valuable than winning, at least so far. I'm not sure, but yes, it's been very surreal and kind of unexpected in my from me anyhow. I mean, I've always written songs, but I didn't expect to do that well any of the times that I did.
Well, you're right. I think you're so right about the connections. I agree with you. And I did Kerrville in 21 and 23. It was, I didn't win either time, but I just met so many people that I still co-write with, still tour with, still grab lunch with when they're in town or whatever. And that whole community is really, really, I don't know, it's something special. And all the song contests have it to an extent, but there's definitely something special about Kerrville. It's like almost expected that after you camp together, and hang out together all weekend or whatever, it's like expected that you'll continue to do stuff, and it's kind of nurtured that way.
It is really, and I mean, I don't know what it is. There is just something really magical about that whole Kerrville scene, and especially that new folk camp of it is very, everybody got really close. Like I was really amazed at whatever's happening in that world. Like you just end up making these really close friends. And actually tonight at my house, one of my friends that I met there at Kerrville, he's coming to stay because he's passing through, Mike Vitale. And it's just really cool to see. That's been like the coolest part. I mean, winning has been awesome, but the friends that I've made and the relationships was the goal. And like that's kind of the nice part about those contests is if you make it into them, that's the actual reward, and everybody gets that. In those cases. I mean, at Telluride I won a guitar, and at Folks Fest I won a guitar. That's really nice too. But yeah, I don't know. It's been such a whirlwind and been so crazy that I'm still kind of like processing all of that stuff. So I check back with me in a year and maybe I'll have more context on all of it.
Yeah. Well, I will. Maybe we'll do this again.
Well, the one thing I will say for people who are wanting to do the contest is, if you think that like winning these contests is going to change your life overnight, I can tell you that is not correct. I don't know if it's going to change your life at all, but my life did not change overnight. So.
Well, but you do sometimes get a nice guitar out of the deal.
True. Yep, that's true. And they are very nice guitars. I do like guitars, and that's great.
You got a nice guitar for Troubadour and Folks Fest, right?
Yeah, I got a Martin D28 at Troubadour, and then at Folks Fest I got a Taylor 514 CE. Yeah, really nice ones. Did
you sell one of them?
I sold the Taylor because I just didn't. I was like moving it around my office down here, and I have this guilt thing of if I don't play a guitar, then I'm like, why is it here? It's a really nice instrument and belongs in the hands of somebody who's going to play it. And I have a bunch of guitars, and my office isn't very big, and so I was getting annoyed, like tripping over it and stuff. And then Taylor guitars, like bluegrass players and Taylor guitars don't really go together very good, because Taylor guitars, I feel like, were built for people who play with a lighter hand, maybe folks who grew up playing electric guitar or something, or folks who play finger style. And so it's not really a sound that I have ever been chasing. And I just felt like guilty having it here, and I like hadn't touched it. And so I took it to a guitar shop here in Denver, and I put it up for sale, and it sold, and I hope it went to somebody who's going to get a lot of love out of it, because I super believe in that. It's one of the things that drives me crazy about the Country Music Hall of Fame, though I love seeing those instruments, like Mabel Carter's guitar. Like, that guitar, like, deserves to be played. Maybe it does get played, I don't know, but it's like, boy.
To that effect, not to get too off topic here, but I know, so John Denver's estate is managed by 7S out of Denver, and when they do certain things like, tribute concerts, with the Colorado Symphony, or they did a 7S tribute to John Denver at Americana Fest last year. They flew down with his guitars. They've maintained them. Cool. They've kept them in great shape. They don't just like sit in a place in a museum or anything. His guitars still get used. I got to play one of them. It's still in pristine condition, like he played a concert with it yesterday. And you don't see a lot of legacy acts, people managing legacy acts doing things like that, and I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. That's something that I appreciate. I love instruments. I mean, they're tools in one way, but they're also like my D18, which I've taken everywhere, is also kind of like my companion. So
yeah. Oh, great guitar. So going back a little bit, I first became a Martin Gilmore fan in college. So there's this, I was a piano major at CU Denver, and they have, I think pretty much all universities, if you're a music major, have something like this, but it's this 0 credit course. And at CU Denver, it was on Friday mornings for all the performance majors. There was no class on Fridays, but you had to take the 0 credit Friday morning course if you were a performance major. And it was called Convocation or General Recital. And basically every Friday, the professors brought in a musical act or a music business person to speak and play to the class. And I really enjoyed it, although all my roommates were always partying on Thursday night because there was no class on Friday, and so I'd come in hungover or whatever. and it actually was funny because I just a couple years ago I got invited to be a guest there, and I remember walking in. I'm like, it's 11:30. Why do all these kids look like? Well, yeah, I guess it makes that adds up. It's still early morning here, but anyway, you were brought in as a guest one week, and by Sean McGowan, and you played some songs. I think maybe you had a fiddle player with you.
I was Nick Amadeo, and my mandolin player was with me.
Nick Amadeo, okay.
That was one of the very first gigs that he and I ever played together. I remember it.
Well, I remembered just your voice and your playing. I just loved what you were doing, and you played this song, Jenny and Jackson, off a record that was kind of new at the time, and I went home. This was before we all had Spotify, and I bought the album on iTunes and put it onto my iPod, and I listened to I had the whole album, but that particular song ended up on our like weekend party playlist with my roommates, who were not music majors, and Jenny and Jackson would come on, and we'd all we knew the lyrics, and we would sing along. So anyway, that was my first Martin music experience, and it's cool that we've become friends years later. So you've been in the Denver scene a long time.
I have been. I moved to Denver in 2007. I was going to school up at the University of Wyoming, and dropped out. I flunked out basically because my parents wouldn't let me drop out, and I wanted to go be a guitar player. I had joined a bluegrass band, or started a bluegrass band called Long Road Home, which still sometimes plays here and there. And I just like, I wasn't doing very good in college, and in retrospect have realized that I was probably having some kind of mental health crisis. But I lived in Wyoming and grew up in Wyoming, and nobody talked about any of that or knew about any of that. So, but it was okay. I moved to Denver and worked at the Old Town Pick and Parlor in Arvada and played in Long Road Home. And Long Road Home was busy at that time. We toured all around the country, and so that was a pretty great introduction. And I can't remember how I got to know Sean. I think it was through the Old Town Pick and Parlor, and then my parents, or my dad, has been involved in the Cheyenne Guitar Society. I'm pretty sure this is how it happened. That they did a concert up there, and Sean McGowan, I can't remember any of the timeline. Anyway, I met Sean somehow, and he asked me to come in and do that. I think because I was teaching bluegrass at Swallow Hill, which I started doing in 2008, and that kind of led into a lot of my life has come out of my Swallow Hill association. Yeah, that's how I met Sean. And I remember that day of doing that thing, and I was so nervous because Sean McGowan is maybe the best guitar player in the world. He's way up there in terms of just his skill level. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to clam it in front of the greatest guitar player I've ever seen.
Yeah. He's a monster. He played for the students a few times, not often, but every once in a while he'd get out and play for us and be like, oh my god.
He and I have done a couple of collaborative concerts where it's basically like a trading songs for the Cheyenne Guitar Society up in Cheyenne, and every time he plays something, I'm just like, man, I don't even know how to start on. I mean, I am a fairly competent guitar player. And every time I see him, I'm just like, holy cow, this is crazy.
Well, I'd say you're more than a fairly competent guitar player, especially because players like Sean McGowan want to play with you.
That is lucky. That's one of the things that's been really nice. And one of the things that I've appreciated about the bluegrass world, and just the environment of bluegrass music in general, is it's pretty simple music. So I wouldn't say it's easy, but the construction is simple. If you know a G, C, and D chord, you can participate in bluegrass, and then the sky's the limit on your skill. And there is kind of an expectation in bluegrass for you to get better, a lot better if you want to hang out. But there's also access to all these famous and great musicians because they all want to pick all the time. And it's not it's competitive, not in the same way as the jazz scene. It's not really cutthroat. They're not people trying to break you down. There are people who are going to compete with you, but they're also really supportive of your playing. I think it's a really great style of music for that. And so I feel lucky to have been able to do that. And that has given me access to all these great musicians, and has asked me to get better as well. The problem is then I hang out with all these great musicians and then think that I suck because I'm hanging out with the best musicians. I'll sit next to Sean McGowan and be like, I suck. Yeah, but he's the best there is.
Well, what a cool cultural thing too that everybody gets around and picks, and that is not a thing necessarily in all genres. So how does that work where you can be sitting in a circle with a beginner and a world-renowned player? How does that come together in bluegrass music?
Well, I think bluegrass music in general kind of asks different questions, different musical questions, at a lower level. I think, don't get me wrong, I think jazz asks these questions too. But the question in bluegrass is not how do we make this harmonic progression interesting, right? The harmonic progression is G, C, and D, and that's it. But the question is, how do I play this G chord the best I possibly can? Tony Rice is going to play the same G chord as me, but it's going to sound better. Why does it sound better? It's the way he holds his pick. It's the way his right hand moves. It's the way he interacts with his instrument. And so the thoughtfulness that goes into kind of these simple things make it so that folks who are beginners can do that. They're just at a different level. And folks who are advanced, can play that same song and still gain the same things out of it. I think those questions are asked in jazz too. Like great jazz players are thinking about the aesthetic of what they're playing and the dynamic of what they're playing. They're thinking about groove. But I mean, I've been around a lot of jazz players who are definitely not thinking about that. And I've been around a lot of bluegrass players who aren't thinking about that. They're just thinking about how do I shred this as fast as I can, and who cares what it sounds like. But because of that, if I were to sit down and play Bury Me Beneath the Willow, and it was somebody who was just beginning, and Tim O'Brien was also in the circle, everybody's going to be able to participate because we all know the song, and it's going to sound good. And because there's going to be a group of people who are so great there, that person who's just starting is going to gain that point of reference of like, what does this sound like? And so like anytime I sit down in a jam session, that's kind of my goal, is trying to assess who is in the session, and how can I play something that everybody can participate in, rather than who's in the session and how can I play something that's going to make everybody stumble. I mean, I could definitely do that, but that's not the goal. The goal is like, how do we get from the beginning of the song to the end of the song so that we can make the best music together. And that's something that I think is really cool. And so that's kind of the question. Like, to be really good at bluegrass isn't necessarily always to be the best, the fastest picker, or know the most licks. It's to be the person who can like curate the best musical experience, right? Who can get, everybody's going to get to make great music here, and we're going to get from the beginning of the song to the end, and it's going to be successful. And to me, I think like advanced musicians in probably any genre recognize that that's a real skill. But there are definitely people who don't do that. But that's the great thing about bluegrass, is you get into a good jam session and 6 hours passes and you don't even know that it's happened. Like, what time is it? 3 a.m. Oh my gosh, we've been here so long.
Not to put you on the spot, and it's totally okay if not, but do you have a guitar on you?
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Yeah. I know, Victor Wooten has this book, I think it's called The Music Lesson, and it's interesting. He was talking about when you learn English or when you learn whatever language, when you're born, you're not put into like a little pen with other babies and expected to learn English. You're around your parents. You're around grandmasters of the English language. And you learn real quick just being immersed in it. And it made me think of that when you were talking about sitting in a circle and picking songs, and you could have a 10-year-old just getting started or a 40-year-old just getting started. Doesn't matter, playing with Tim O'Brien and Martin Gilmore and Sean McGowan, and how neat that is, I think, for the elder musicians to realize that. What I was going to ask you, if you have your guitar out, is just like in a G, C, and D, how might like a beginner play that? How might an intermediate player play that? And how might a more advanced player do that same progression?
Yeah, like if you were just starting in bluegrass, you could play lots of different things. I mean, I think pretty much everybody learns like a G, C, and D chord when they first start on the guitar. Yeah. And so you might learn how to learn the basic strum, which is going to be like a bass drum kind of rhythm.
Yeah.
And so like a beginner player might do like G and then to C, then to D, right? Maybe they learn the alternate bass thing. As you go on a little bit more, there's like stylistic things that rather than this G major chord, a lot of times in bluegrass we kind of remove the third out of that one chord so that whoever's playing can play like a minor pentatonic scale if they want to. They can put in some blues licks. Because there's a lot of like bluesy stuff that's kind of combined with a major scale in bluegrass. And so it becomes this G5, right, where you have kind of a cleaned up sound. And also, like with bluegrass, there's sort of this way of kind of filling the space, like you want to have this driving rhythm. So the basic rhythm is like bass drum, and then to to add in the place you would put in an upstroke, which kind of is the notes in between that bass drum. So instead of bass drum, it would be like that.
And so by omitting the third, you're making it so the soloist can have a choice between soloing in major or minor, G major or G minor.
Yeah, and it's not going to clash too much. I mean, when you switch to the other chords, maybe it will clash a little more, but that's sort of the goal. And it also cleans it up as you drive harder. It's basically a power chord. I mean, it's a G5 chord, right? So Bluegrass is doing the same thing that like Led Zeppelin's doing with let's take the third out of this and turn the distortion up. Bluegrass is kind of doing that too, just to kind of clean it up. I mean, if I was doing that down up strum with a third in it, it just sounds muddy,
right?
Yeah, so I clean it up this way.
Okay.
Yeah, if that makes sense. Now, an advanced player is going to incorporate all sorts of like dynamic markers because maybe they know the song, right? So they're going to be able to play through the phrases a little bit better. They're going to play dynamically. They're going to construct each of the verses. So if I was like the first verse is going to have some different dynamic arc than the second verse. The third verse is going to do something different. They're going to frame out the song so that like there's dynamic stuff that happens in between the phrases. So if I was singing, let's see, like a Blue Ridge Cabin Home, which goes, "There's a well-beaten path on that old mountainside where I wandered when I was a lad. There I wandered alone to the place I call home in those Blue Ridge hills far away." So it still has that forward advancing bluegrass beat, but I'm adding bass lines in. I'm accenting heavy parts of the phrases. The space between the phrases, the volume of the guitar goes up. So it's kind of like that becomes kind of the advancement thing, and that's all just rhythm. I mean, none of that is lead. But that's the stuff that I think makes great players, and that's all stuff you don't have to know anything more than a G, C, and D chord. There's no harmonic complexity to that. I haven't really changed anything there. It's just learning how to move your right hand, how to hear the phrase and accentuate the phrase, and that's sort of the nice thing about bluegrass is those are musical questions that a lot of times people don't even arrive at, and bluegrass like almost immediately asks you those questions. One of the nice things about growing up around like all the great players though is like you get to hear those people do that, right? Like the reason that people don't arrive at that is because they just never hear anybody thinking that way. And they don't know what the right sound is. So if you hang out with great players, even if they don't teach you anything, you just know like, oh, this is the sound I'm after. Like this person is great, and this is the sound they make, and that's the sound I want to make because that's what I want to do, right? And that's sort of the nice thing about hanging out with great musicians, and bluegrass provides access to that.
So now your new record just came out a couple months ago. Forgive me on the exact date. Was it May? April?
It was April 22nd. Yeah.
April
Thea
22nd.
is a light blue. Yeah.
You recorded it solo. It's you and a guitar and a vocal. What was behind the decision to do that rather than bring in, a band, that kind of production?
Well, my first record has a pretty good band on it, and I've had that one for a long time, and it's kind of got a bluegrassy sound. And then the record that I kind of had made previous to that was a bigger release was my trio, which had a band as well. And I play a lot of shows that are just solo, and I have songs that I play that I don't really do with a band context, with a band situation, and so I wanted to release those solo songs, and then I had a bunch of other new songs that I thought it would be cool just to have something that kind of sounds like that iteration of me. I do have like band arrangements for some of those songs, and as the record's gone on and we've played more of those band arrangements, I'm like, I should have recorded it this way, but that I made the decision already.
Well, you can put up an alternate version.
yeah, that's right. I can always do it and add them to other things, but it's something that I've always done. Like I've always played solo shows. I've always and I wanted something that sounded like that. I had a lot of recordings that are things that were kind of like tracks that didn't make it on other records that I had recorded solo, just because they didn't fit necessarily me playing them solo on the record. And so because I had kind of a backlog of a few of those, I thought these need a home, and I have other songs I could, like, it costs pretty much the same, I feel like, to release an EP as it does to release a full record, especially when it's just you playing it. It's just a couple more hours in the studio. So I was like, I'll just go make the whole record. And it was fun. I mean, it's hard to be in the studio all by yourself, just me and the engineer. It's hard, it's hard to, a lot of times it's nice to have other people there who are like your cheerleader and who will tell you, oh yeah, that sounds good, or oh, you need to do that again. But this one was just me, and I kind of played each of the songs like 3 times, and we chose the one that was the best, and that's kind of where it came from.
I was gonna ask you that. It's when you're by yourself, it's very raw. You might have a great take where you hit a note that's a little flat or whatever.
Right.
That's all part of it. How particular were you about having every little thing just right? Did you just say, that's 3 takes, we're going to pick the best one when our ears get a rest and roll with it?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. There was no, because of the way I did it, I tracked it live, and I tracked the vocals and the guitar all at the same time, so there's no isolation to the point where we could tune anything. And I hear some of that in the record of like, oh, if I had recorded those separate, we probably could have tuned it, or we could have changed something. And yeah, it's just me there in the room through really great microphones. Like Aaron Youngberg engineered it, and the sound of the record is awesome. I think it's probably like the best sound of my guitar and my voice that we possibly could have gotten. But yeah, that's basically what we did, unless I felt like I have another one in me that I think can be better. We may have done a couple of them, maybe 5 times, but for the most part, it was pretty much just like 3 times and then done. I practiced a lot before I went in the studio. Yeah, so I was pretty much ready and could sit down and get from the beginning to the end of the song. I don't know, you know this, and other people probably know this, but being in the studio, the pressures are way different than sitting in your practice room, and you get really into your head. And so I tried to avoid doing that. I tried to just say, what would I play in front of people, and how can I put this down on a record with really excellent sound. And I think the record sounds really great. Aaron did an amazing job. The playing, you all can have the opinion of that.
The playing sounds great. And I with the studio thing, the thing that gets me the most is if I've got to take where I started and the vibe is immaculate, right? And it doesn't always matter. You can be playing at the same tempo, the same way. A vibe hits on some of the takes. Maybe I'll do something nuanced that's really cool, and then forget the lyrics in the 3rd verse, and it's like, we got to do another take. So then I will try to repeat what I did in the previous take, and that is like the most dangerous, frustrating mindset, because you really do have to, let it go and get ready for the next at bat, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's tough. I think we may have punched the ending of a couple of the songs where something like that happened, and it was like, well, the vibe is so good at the beginning of this, maybe I can just get into it and we'll get to the end of the song. But when you do that with that, I couldn't go back and punch in part of it because I didn't record to a click track or anything. I would just have to punch and start and then play to the end of the song, right? And I think we did, I can't remember which song we did that on. I know we did it once because just the vibe was so good on everything else before that I didn't want to, I didn't want to deal with it. But.
Okay, so what does the album cycle, the quote-unquote album cycle, look like for you? I mean, you've been consistently teaching and performing for a long time. I know there was, in terms of like music on streaming platforms, I think you did something in 2009. And then it was about 9 years, and then you did this cover. Well, American. You were doing trade songs of the American West. It came out last year, and then this year having another record. So you've been consistent the last couple of years of actually putting stuff on streaming platforms. Do you have some sort of a method for how you promote it and make the next one, or do you just put it out there and say, well, I hope people listen to this, I'm going to keep doing my thing? What does that look like for you? I
don't have a strategy for that, and that's probably to my detriment. I've sort of, like, when I released my first record in 2008, that was kind of, iTunes was the thing, right? Like, everybody had an iPod, and that was sort of the way it was marketed. And that was like my first exposure to like how lopsided that whole thing was. Because I remember my record, like, if somebody bought it for $1, I think iTunes kept like 60 cents of that dollar on their platform. Right. And all they're doing is selling it. Like, they didn't make it or anything like that. And I was like, wow, this is kind of bogus. And, but back then I could sell CDs and it was fine. I printed way too many of that first record, and I still have a lot of them. But I just give them away, and it's a good record. And, but I made my money back on that eventually. It took many years, but people were buying records every time I go play somewhere. I was selling, seven records or something like that, and which was fine in that case. And then I toured with Longhorn Home, and Longhorn Home made a record around the same time as my first record, and we sold a lot of those. And then we made another record in 2010 or 2011, and we sold a bunch of those too, and that was kind of what I had focused on at that time. Then I lived in Egypt for 2 years and made a record there, kind of as a souvenir. And then when I came back, I sort of really dove into trying to be consistent with record making. But I had a kid, and then the pandemic happened, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway. Yeah. So I had my trio record, and all that. All this to say, none of those things, like pretty much up until that trio record, I think, like, records were still selling. I could still sell CDs, right? Like, CDs were selling. But my buddy, our buddy Jackson Emmer, and I were joking about this. If you want to know the state of the music business, they took the CD players out of the cars, like where everybody listened to CDs. All gone now. Like, you can't. Sure. People are just streaming music, and there's no consistent money in that. And because of my experience with iTunes, I've sort of always been kind of against that whole situation, because, like, they're taking a huge cut of your music. Yeah. And you can make more money, but that's not really the case anymore. I think you're, at least for the time being, pretty much Spotify is what you have to be doing. I mean, it's what the promoters are looking at. They want to see how many followers you have on your Spotify. It's what everybody's looking at. And, Spotify, for better or worse, like, isn't really supporting DIY artists in any realistic way. Yeah. Now, to be fair, I have never really put much effort into releasing on Spotify. I've never really considered it that much. I put my music up on Bandcamp and try to steer people in that direction. Yeah. But I think that I've kind of come to the realization after this record was released, like, hey, and just the realization of the modern music world, that you got to put some energy into Spotify, because it really, really matters right now. Like, really matters.
Yeah, it's really interesting that it works that way. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and praise Spotify. And, I know all this stuff has come out recently about Daniel Ek, the CEO, gave like $700 million to a company that makes military weapons or something like that. It's just every time you hear something about him, and it's just about Spotify. It seems to be in a negative light towards indie musicians and in the world even. Yeah. But it is the place. I know some artists are pulling their music off. One of the big ones just did it, was like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. If you say that 5 times fast, pulled their music off. Neil Young at one point pulled his music off. I don't know that does an indie artist any good, pulling their music off. It seems like a thing you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard when you're trying to book stuff and people are looking at your Spotify count, right? Like, and you have no Spotify count because you put no effort into it because you have, because you disagree with Spotify in some way or another. I don't know. I teach music history, so like my Trade Songs American West record, I made that record because I learned all these cowboy songs for a class I was teaching at the University of Denver. And I've taught several of those. And one of the things about, like, teaching those classes that's really comforting to know about history, comforting in one way, and discomforting in another way, is that it's pretty much the same as it always has been. That we're like in the 1920s, the record industry was kind of the Wild West, and there was all sorts of crazy stuff happening, and nobody knew what was going on, and everybody's trying to figure out how to make money in it. And all these systems kind of emerged in the 1920s. And I think like in the 1920s record business and the modern day record business look really similar. Like there's really similar stuff going on. It was all singles driven. It was all like all these people hustling. There weren't really like established rights for musicians and how they were going to get paid, and all that stuff kind of got sorted out over time. I mean, it was all kind of driven by these like music conglomerates, which are not exactly the same people, but sort of similar people. It was like RCA Victor and all of that. So it's basically like big business people, some of whom were probably pretty unsavory, driving music. So the nice thing about that is we're not living in a particularly harder or really all that different of a time. The hard part about that is it's probably not going to change, and it's probably going to be the same, and that's just the way it is. The one thing I will say though, yeah, like as a DIY artist, it was not practical in the 1920s to be a DIY artist. You could not make your own records. I mean, pretty much up until like the 1980s, like making an independent record was a real feat, like really hard.
Sure.
And it has gotten so much easier now that I could sit here today and make a record on my computer and put it up, and it would be available to everyone, and it would sound okay. Like, the technology I have would be fine. That's a real advantage to something. So I think there's a lot of like bright spots here and there, but in terms of making money from selling your recorded music, I've sort of like, I just don't think it's possible anymore. Like, at least not now. Maybe it'll be possible in the future.
So we were just chatting about the other day. One of the biggest things in the music industry that's a struggle, or one of the problems, is how to make money from your recorded music. So, have you kind of just given up on that for now and are making income from teaching and live performance? I mean, is there a part of you that sees a solution in the future, and what would that be like?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I make my money from playing and teaching. That's kind of been the way I've done it for 15 years, and it's been awesome. The problem with that is it's really hard to get out on the road and tour, and I don't want to teach forever. And so like building some kind of passive income or some, that sort of helps is a thing that is doable for musicians, but it's changed a lot. I mean, pretty much I think the way, if you want to make passive income and get your music out there, the way is to get the sync licensing, the placements on TV and film, and that's pretty much it. I have no idea how to do that. If anybody has advice, send it my way. I think there's also like kind of a sort of, for me anyway, I sort of have this, I don't know if it's a stick in the mud kind of thing, but like the music that I make isn't like in a popular style, right? Like, and I would say like even within the bluegrass world, it's probably not like in the most popular style within the bluegrass world, but I can't help it. Like it's all I can do is the thing that I'm doing, and I don't really have an interest in changing up like necessarily what I'm doing. Man, maybe that'll change. And so I think there's something to that like all of my complaints might also be geared towards the fact that I made a record of old-timey cowboy music that maybe the general public isn't as interested in as I am, but that's okay. So I don't know. I'm not like hopeless about it. I'm sort of frustrated that like the CD thing, the way that I used to play, the way that the money could most directly affect the artist has gone by the wayside, and that there are a lot of people who haven't like necessarily helped pick up the slack. Yeah, I don't know, but I don't want to complain about my audience because that's not really the case in those. Yeah. But I have a lot of CDs. It would be great if people would buy them.
I've got so many sitting under my bed still too. Back when I was like, well, let's start with 1,000. It's like, well,
yeah. I mean, I guess the thing about it is there's also a lot of things that can really support artists. Like the Patreon is great, and I think a lot of musicians that's really helping their bottom line is folks contributing to their Patreon, and it's a great way of distributing it. The thing that's really frustrating, and this is just like happens, is that the technology changes and the medium of the technology changes, and so like everybody had to rebuy their whole record collection on CD. And prior to that, everybody had to rebuy their whole record collection on cassette. And prior to that, everybody had to buy their whole record collection on LP, right? And so, like, the frustrating part of it is there are people in my world that really want CDs. That's the way they listen to music.
Yes,
they still need them.
right.
And CDs are expensive to print. And those people don't stream music. And then the people who stream music don't buy the CDs. And I think even to the best of intentions, maybe then don't realize that they're like them listening to my music isn't really financially supporting the artist, or any artist is not financially supporting me necessarily. And I don't know. Yeah, it's just like an awareness of like, hey, there's other ways to support artists, of join their Patreon and all that stuff. And it's really hard to like stand on stage and talk about all that, because that's like a 5-minute spiel about here's how you can support my music.
Here's how you can support my music. Yeah. And it's pronounced Gilmore, Gilmore, Gilmore. So one thing about bluegrass music, though, is I do feel, I mean, bluegrass has a cult following, right? Yeah. I mean, when we were at Telluride Bluegrass together last year, right? And you just see it, and it's not just a cult following, it's all ages. There are young people. It is all of a sudden a cool thing to do. Maybe not all of a sudden, for people in their late 20s and early 30s, right? It's not just...
I think it's pretty much all of a sudden. Like, there's some really stuff that happened in bluegrass that has never happened before right now. So,
well, that's got to be neat. I mean, just... I feel like part of the demographic that would have been going to the club 10 years ago is going to bluegrass festivals, and that's pretty darn cool. And we've seen artists like Molly Tuttle and Sierra Farrell and Billy Strings. I just saw Billy Strings in Nashville a few months ago, and he did like 3 nights, and he was all over town. He was at the Arena, he was at the Ryman. He just, I mean, larger than life. In doing the music, I mean, I'm not really in the bluegrass world, so I can't speak to this, but it seems like doing a service to the music by bringing out to sit in with him at shows, like people who have led the way. Some of the elders in the scene are coming out to play with him. So, is that encouraging to you at all to see what's kind of happening with the scene?
Yeah, totally. I really like Billy Strings. I think he is a good representative of bluegrass, and he also, I mean, plays all sorts of music, and his shows are really great. And bluegrass has kind of had other resurgences like this in the past, like in the 70s, 1971, I think, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band released Will the Circle Be Unbroken, and that was a real shot in the arm for bluegrass. It kind of kept people employed for a long time. And then Oh Brother, Where Art Thou in 2000, when that came out. I mean, I used to joke and kind of seriously, like, my career is pretty much based on Oh Brother, Where Art Thou. Like, if that movie had not come out, the reality of me being able to do this probably would not have been there. I always tell people, like, if you want to be successful in life, get into something really weird and hope the Coen brothers make a movie about it. And because I really have felt that way. The Jamgrass thing, in like the 2010s with Yonder Mountain String Band kind of blowing up was helpful. But this new Billy Strings thing is on a whole other level of, especially as a guitar teacher. I mean, I get inquiries about guitar playing all the time. I teach a class on bluegrass guitar. It's pretty much full all the time, and it's definitely 100% like due to the popularity of Billy Strings. And so, like, especially for bluegrass, which has kind of a community around it, like they say, a rising tide floats all boats, and that's definitely the case going on here. Of Billy Strings is keeping a lot of people besides himself employed, because folks want to learn how to play bluegrass. Folks are interested in bluegrass again. And Billy Strings also provides a path for like bluegrass songwriters, because people are buying bluegrass music, that you might have a chance to write a song that him or somebody like him might record, and that's a boost for songwriters. It gives a lot of momentum to bluegrass stuff, and it's really exciting. Like, it's a really particularly exciting time in bluegrass music history, and you can just see it. I mean, never ever in the past has there ever been a bluegrass band that could sell out one arena, let alone one arena 3 nights in a row. Never. Billy Strings does that. Like, that's amazing.
Well, I don't think any purists look at him and like, he can't play, he's just popular. Dude plays his ass off. I mean,
and and I've talked to some people who are like bluegrass purist folks, and they're enthusiastic about Billy Strings. There's always kind of this like, well, why am I not? I'm just as good as him, kind of thing that happens in bluegrass. But that happens with everybody in bluegrass, and but I think in general everybody's like really, really stoked. For the most part, I would say everybody's really stoked for this. That it's really putting bluegrass in a good light, and he does such a great job tipping his hat to all the traditional folks. He has Larry Sparks on stage. He has all the people who like, he makes videos with Del McCurry. So he's really tipping his hat to all the people who matter to the bluegrass people. So that's great. More power to him. He's awesome. He's a great guitar player and seems like a super great person. I don't know him at all, but it's amazing.
Maybe you'll catch him in a picking circle one of these days.
I met him long, long ago before he was famous at Rocky Grass when he was playing with Don Julin, just for a second, and he was very, very friendly, but it was just like, hey, great job, man. And he's like, yeah, thanks. And, oh, you play guitar? And that, just like the kind of basic stuff. But he seemed cool then, but I wouldn't have like a long conversation, but he seems very cool now. So
one thing I wanted to chat with you about before we hit time here is you spent some time out in Cairo, Egypt. You were living out there for a little while, and I think you did a collaboration out there as well. Yes.
Yeah.
So what was that like? What made you go to Egypt? What were you doing?
My wife is a teacher, and she wanted to teach internationally. And my bluegrass band, Long Road Home, the banjo player in our band is in a band called Hot Rise, which is a pretty famous and influential bluegrass band, and they had made a new record. So he left to go tour with Hot Rise, and we had been together for 10 years, and it was just kind of time for that band to take a little bit of a break. And she wanted to go teach internationally, so the stars kind of aligned, and I was like, yeah, sure, I can go be unemployed in Egypt. I can be unemployed anywhere. And so I went with her, and she taught at the school, and I was kind of like a travel agent, like people would come and visit. I taught some guitar lessons at the school there too, to the kids. But Cairo's a really, like, it's a big city, but it's a big music city and a big cultural city in the Arab world. Kind of the 3 big Arab cultural centers are Baghdad, Damascus, and Cairo, and Jerusalem, but specifically for Arabs, like Damascus, Baghdad, and Cairo. And at that time, Damascus and Baghdad were war-torn, so a lot of musicians from around the Middle East had moved to Cairo. And Cairo was kind of a powerhouse cultural place anyhow.
Yeah.
Which, if you ever go there, you'll see, like, man, it's Egypt, like it's the beginning of history, right? Like, there,
right?
So I kind of, there was a guitar store that just happened to be pretty much right across the street from my house in Mahdi, which is Mahdi is the neighborhood of Cairo where I lived, and there's a lot of expats around. So there's a guitar store there. I didn't know it was there when I moved in, and it was kind of on like the 2nd or 3rd floor of this walk-up building. And I looked up and I saw it there, and I went up to, because it's a guitar store, so I went up, and there was a kid working behind the desk. His name was Essam El Hagar, and he teaches in Saudi Arabia now. And Essam's uncle is a guy named Ali El Hagar, who's one of the most famous singers in Egypt. He's like the Michael Bolton of Egypt. They love easy listening music in Egypt, so Michael Bolton kind of stuff is really popular there. And Ali is definitely like one of the most famous people I've ever met, but not in America, just in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And so Essam and I kind of struck up a friendship, and we'd hang out, and I wanted to buy an oud, and so he knew some people who built ouds, and I went over to their oud shop and bought a nice one, and met these players. And we were getting ready to come home because I had gotten a job teaching bluegrass at the University of Northern Colorado, and we were kind of packing up, and we had it was about a month until we were going to leave, and my wife says, "Hey, you should record a record while you're over here with some of these guys." And I thought, hey, that's a great idea. And so Assam helped me find this oud player named Islam El Hagar. No, sorry. Islam El, oh geez. I know there's like 3 guys that I worked with and they all have a similar last name. Abati, El Abati. Islam El Abati. And Islam's amazing. He didn't speak any English when we were hanging out, or he spoke very little English and I speak very little Arabic. And we just kind of jammed on some songs, and then we went into the studio at Ali El Hagar's studio and sat there one night during Ramadan and recorded a record. And
wow.
I kind of put some songs together. We played an Egyptian traditional song. We played a traditional American fiddle tune. I wrote an instrumental. I wrote a song about the Camel Corps called Haji Ali. The Camel Corps was an endeavor by the U.S. Army to bring camels over to the Mojave Desert to chase around Apache Indians. It's a real thing. You should look it up.
Okay.
And then we improvised on a song. We just sat there and improvised, and he's amazing. Like, he's definitely one of the best musicians I've ever played with, and we couldn't really talk to each other because he didn't speak English. And we just played that night. We started at 9 p.m., recorded until 2:30 in the morning, and that was it. That was the record. So it's kind of an EP, more like record, like six songs. But yeah, Egypt is amazing. It's international travel is wild because you don't just learn about the other place. You learn a lot about yourself, about the things that you value, about where you grow up and the ideas that you have. And it was one of the best experiences of my life, was living in Egypt, and I'm very glad I wasn't born there. I mean, I love Egypt.
Yeah.
But you learn to really appreciate, democracy and freedom, and there's not trash in the streets, and the corruption in Egypt is so bad that you can't get anything done. It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I bet that was just an amazing experience that most Americans can't say they've had.
Yeah. I mean, I would encourage everybody to go to Egypt because you get such a great context for the world of just like how long we've been here and what civilization looks like and how it started. And I mean, you can really, like, it's a long scope backwards to go to Egypt and see all that stuff. It's unbelievable. Like, you can't even. It warped my understanding of the world because I went to Athens and I saw the Parthenon, which is like 1,500 years old, and I was like, oh, this is pretty new, like in comparison to Egypt, because that stuff's 3,000, 4,000, 4,500 years old.
They built a replica in Nashville. So I went to that.
Oh yeah,
but I don't think that quite counts. But
I should say the Parthenon's. I think it's 1,500 BC. It's more than 3,500 years old. Yeah. I have been to the Parthenon in Nashville. It's not the same. They didn't even build it on the top of a giant rock outcropping. What are they doing?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting to see, to say the least, and they do concerts in there sometimes too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing. It's one of the things I like about. I like that quirky stuff when cities come up with some crazy person comes up with like a quirky idea. What if we build the Parthenon right here? Yeah, awesome. That sounds great. Got to do something.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. Did we leave anything out?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me. This is great, and I'm looking forward to seeing you down the road. We'll see you at least one more time this year.
Yeah, yep, in just a few weeks in Austin. Well, if you don't mind, stay on the line with me for just a sec, but in front of our audience, I just want to say thanks again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
All right, that was my conversation with Martin Gilmore. What a cool dude. If you'd like to hear more of his music, Martin Gilmore on any of the streaming platforms or Bandcamp. Maybe start with Bandcamp or go to his website, and order a CD. And, you can listen to it if you have a CD player. And if not, it's still a great way to support, and you can stream it online, right? I think that's all for today. This is Middle Class Rockstar. I'm Andy Sito. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, write a review, whatever you do to get notified about future episodes. And I'll chat with you real soon. Thanks.